You are sitting in a waiting room. There is nothing to do. No phone. No conversation. Just silence and a clock on the wall. Within minutes, something in you starts to ache. You shift in your seat. You sigh. You check the clock again, even though you know it has barely moved. This feeling has a name. Boredom. And it feels distinctly modern, like a side effect of comfort, of too much free time and not enough stimulation. But here's the strange part. Boredom is not new. It is not a glitch caused by smartphones or Netflix or instant gratification. Boredom is ancient. It existed long before agriculture, long before written language, long before anything you'd recognize as modern life. Your ancestors felt it too, sitting in caves, waiting out storms, waiting for prey, waiting for anything at all to happen. So how did they survive it? They did not have books. They did not have music streaming. They did not even have written stories. And yet they endured hours, sometimes days, of total stillness. The answer to how they did this is far stranger than you might expect, and it reveals something uncomfortable about why your brain still hates being idle today. Let's start with what boredom actually is. Psychologists define it as the unpleasant feeling of wanting to be engaged in a satisfying activity, but being unable to do so. Dr. John Eastwood, a psychologist at York University, describes it not as laziness, but as a cognitive itch. Your brain is signaling that it wants meaningful input, and it is not getting any. Evolution does not waste energy on useless feelings. Boredom likely pushed early humans to explore, to seek out new resources, new territory, new information about the world around them. Sitting still wasted daylight. It meant missed chances to find food before another group did. So your ancestors' brains were wired to punish inactivity with that same itch you feel in a waiting room. But early humans clearly did sit still sometimes. Storms kept them inside shelters. Injuries kept them immobile. Long winters meant long stretches with limited movement and limited tasks. So if boredom was constantly pushing them to act, what did they actually do when there was nothing to act on? This is where the story gets interesting. When you actually look at what idle hours produced in prehistoric communities, the range is far wider than most people assume. Take cave art. Sites like Lascaux and Chauvet, some over 30,000 years old, contain thousands of paintings, far more than any practical purpose required. Archaeologist Dr. April Noel has argued that some of these images may not have been purely religious or survival-driven. Some were what she calls non-utilitarian behavior. Doodling, essentially, born from idle hands with nothing urgent to do. Then there are the markings. Notched bones and etched pebbles dating back over 40,000 years, found across European and African sites, show rows of identical repeated lines. Some researchers believe these were primitive tally systems, ways of counting days or lunar cycles. But many show far more marks than any practical counting would require, suggesting the carving itself, the repetitive motion, the small sense of progress, was the actual point. Toolmaking went the same way. Knapping a stone into a usable blade takes focus and rhythm, and some sites contain more finished tools than researchers would expect from immediate needs alone. A few archaeologists believe surplus tool production was partly recreational, a way of staying occupied and sharpening a skill that mattered, even when there was no immediate need for the tool itself. Children almost certainly played. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups have observed something that likely mirrors deep history. Kids inventing games with pebbles, racing, throwing contests, mimicking the calls and movements of animals around them. These activities cost nothing, required no equipment, and doubled as practice for skills they would need later: tracking, throwing, reading the terrain. And then there was the fire itself. Long evenings with nothing left to do often turned into something closer to a primitive game night. Storytelling competitions, riddles, rhythmic chanting, and call-and-response songs. Some groups likely danced, not for ritual alone, but because movement to rhythm was simply something enjoyable to do once the work was finished. This is not so different from what you do today when you click a pen over and over during a boring meeting, doodle in the margins of a notebook, or scroll through your phone looking for something, anything, to fill the gap. Your brain has not changed much. It is still looking for small tasks, small rhythms, small wins, to fill the exact same itch. Storytelling deserves a closer look, because it likely did more heavy lifting than any other boredom cure. Long before written language, oral storytelling was already a deeply embedded human behavior. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied modern hunter-gatherer groups, specifically the Jew/Hoansi people of the Kalahari, and found something revealing about how their daytime and nighttime activities differed. During the day, conversations were largely practical. Who found food? Who needs help? Logistics, complaints, coordination. But at night, once the work was done and the group sat around the fire with nothing left to do, conversation shifted almost entirely towards storytelling. Myths. histories, jokes, gossip about people far away. Wiesner found that firelight itself seemed to trigger this shift, encouraging imagination, empathy, and shared narrative in a way that daylight tasks did not allow. This suggests something profound. Boredom around the fire was not wasted time. It was the exact condition that pushed early humans toward culture, toward myth-making, toward the kind of storytelling that built shared identity, taught moral lessons, and passed knowledge from one generation to the next without a single written word. In other words, your ancestors' fight against boredom may be one of the reasons humans developed complex language and culture at all. If life had been constant action with zero downtime, there may have been no space, no need, for imagination to expand the way it did. Boredom, then, was not a flaw in the system. It was a pressure valve that pushed early humans toward two very different outlets. Physical restlessness, which sent them out to explore and gather information about their environment, and mental restlessness, which sent them inward, towards storytelling, pattern-making, and eventually, abstract thought. This dual response still lives inside you today, even if you rarely notice it. When you're bored, you either feel the urge to physically do something, to get up, to pace, to check your phone, to move. Or you drift inward, daydreaming, replaying memories, inventing scenarios in your head. Both responses trace back to the exact same evolutionary toolkit your ancestors used to survive empty hours by a fire or in a cave. Researcher Sandy Mann, a psychologist who has extensively studied boredom, found something that should sound familiar. In her experiments, participants who were deliberately bored, given a tedious task with nothing else to do, later performed better on creative thinking tasks than participants who were kept constantly stimulated. Boredom, in other words, doesn't just sit there uselessly. It pushes the brain toward novelty, toward new connections, toward creativity. This means the discomfort you feel scrolling through your phone, searching for something, anything, to relieve that itch, is the exact same discomfort that once pushed a human 40,000 years ago to carve patterns into bone or invent a story about the stars. The feeling is identical, only the response has changed. And this is where the modern mirror becomes impossible to ignore. You live in a world engineered to eliminate every trace of boredom. The moment that itch appears, you reach for a device that instantly floods your brain with stimulation. Endless scrolling, short videos, algorithmically perfect content tailored to keep that itch silent before it even fully forms. But your ancestors didn't have that option. They had to sit with the discomfort. And sitting with it is exactly what pushed them toward creativity, storytelling, and connection. When you eliminate boredom entirely, you may also be eliminating the exact mental space that boredom was designed to create. This is not a call to throw away your phone. It's a reminder of what's actually happening underneath that small ache you feel when there's nothing to do. Your brain is not broken. It's not failing to entertain itself. It is doing exactly what it evolved to do tens of thousands of years ago, signaling that it wants meaningful engagement, even if it doesn't yet know what that engagement should be. The next time you feel that itch, in a waiting room, in a slow afternoon, in the dead silence of a sleepless night, try not to immediately silence it. Sit with it for just a moment longer than usual. Somewhere underneath that discomfort is the same ancient mechanism that once pushed a human, sitting by a fire 40,000 years ago, to pick up a stone and start carving the first patterns of human imagination. You are sitting in a waiting room. There is nothing to do. No phone, no conversation, just silence and a clock on the wall. And for the first time, instead of reaching for your pocket, you let the silence stretch a little longer, and you notice exactly what your ancestors noticed first. Boredom was never empty. It was always waiting to be filled, and the feeling you're trying to silence may be the same feeling that built civilization.